everyone, welcome to Art and Talk. Art and Talk is an online interviewing platform for artists to share their art, creativity, and passion. We embrace all the arts, the traditional arts and the spiritual arts, to bring you diverse and quality interviews to watch and be inspired by. If you haven't had a moment to check out our full video library on our YouTube channel, we invite you to check it out. We have writers, we have poets, we have visual artists, we have spiritual artists, we have musicians, little something for everybody. So do take a moment and check out our video library on our YouTube channel. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Art and Talk. And for about the next week or so, we're going to be diving deep into a collection of artists who are currently on exhibit at the Biennial exhibit, which is at the Cultural Council in Lake Worth, Florida, here locally in South Florida. And it's featuring all Palm Beach artists, all professional, artists, creative professionals. And so today we'll be starting with our first artist from the Biennial exhibit. And the Biennial exhibit has some amazing, amazing work. It's artists that are pushing the boundaries of how we view art and opening up interesting conversations about art and using a variety of media as well. So stick around with us for about the next week or so and find out about these amazing artists. Again, currently at the Biennial exhibit at the Cultural Council. So if you're local, you definitely want to stop by and check out the exhibit. If you're not local, we'll be providing a link to their website and you can read a little bit more about what this exhibit is about. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome our first artist from the Biennial exhibit, Samantha Johns. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here with you, Leslie Sue.
Thank you, Samantha. I've already had like a little sneak peek of your like amazing, brilliant, really innovative work. So I'm so excited to find out what it's all about. I know a few little things that you use recycled materials, you use wire, you use a variety of paper, lots of different materials. But before we jump into that, Samantha, can you just give us a little bit of a background about your artistic journey?
Sure. So I am an interdisciplinary artist. Obviously, I'm living and working here in Palm Beach County, and I have my work in the Biennial is it's an installation piece made up of 44 different individual pieces. In general, my body of work focuses on the idea of home as a container for memories. Um, Home is a space that can be defined in so many ways. So that's something that I'm really interested in and investigating in my work. And so I do use all of these different materials to do so. But visually and the ideas behind my work are really about the sort of accumulation of memories that happens within homes. Their houses are eerie spaces, and especially since we're in them all the time right now, I think it's an especially poignant subject to delve into. But the thing that interests me are this idea of patterns and memories that layer themselves within our homes. And every person that has inhabited a home leaves this sort of trace. So it's almost like homes are haunted in a way by these layers of memories, which I echo in the materials that I use, creating with all kinds of layers. And I think there's a big fascination with this idea in a lot of urban exploration, people photographing lovely, abandoned buildings and abandoned homes with the remnants of other people's lives. And we tend to ignore the fact that the same thing is happening around us in our own spaces, and I think that fascination is this universal desire to see how things kind of fade and change and transform over time. It's a reflection of our own sort of finite existence, not to be too morbid about it, but as living beings, that's what we do. So my work, when I'm creating it, I'm vacillating between capturing these individual personal memories of my own and like images and little snippets that, pop into your mind sort of randomly, and general ideas of the different types of relationships that we have with home. I'll do things like asking questions: what makes a home safe or unsafe? Is there such a thing as a perfect home? And really, what makes us idealize memories of home as well. So that's all kind of wrapped up into my work and all the different mediums that I play with.
Mhm. Wow, this is a fascinating topic. So you're really opening up a whole discussion of homes as kind of, I guess, the larger umbrella, and then looking at like the memories and also like the transient aspects of our lives of homes, your memories, other memories, what you're even exploring, like what is a home, and just looking at all these different aspects of home.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think I came to this process after having moved back. My husband and I lived in England for 5 years, and which is such a wonderful country, and I dearly miss it. It's a beautiful country if you ever get a chance or have been. And after having moved back here to Florida, which is also a wonderful tropical sunny place, um, there's I had a homesickness, about England and moving belongings back and forth and working, having all of your belongings in these cardboard boxes, and the boxes themselves, the cardboard becomes this sort of home containing all of your belongings. And so it was sort of this natural evolution of working with this material that had been a part of my life with these different moves. And I moved around quite a lot as a child as well. So it's sort of always been in my past, and um, has really been a huge part of this body of work, in the fact that it's those same containers that have come from England back to here, or have carried belongings even from like Amazon shipments and all the different things that come into our lives. The cardboard, it takes marks, it absorbs everything that goes on around it. It's gets indented and um has this record of everything it's been through. It's this very malleable, almost flesh-like material that I really love to work with. It has structure and it has a skin and a flesh, and it's very unique. So
You have a very like tactile and very like sensitive and intuitive and observant aspect of your surroundings and of your home. That's kind of like the picture that you're kind of presenting. Is that kind of on the mark?
yes, absolutely. I think that, being a very media intensive society, we tend to think visually as artists. I think we it's assumed that we think visually, but there's so much more to it, and trying to bring that tactile portion of experience into artwork, even though you're not supposed to touch it. How can I insinuate a smell or a sound, just ring one of those mental bells for a memory for someone else, through the transformation of my memories into these forms.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. And so the memory is your memory, but it's interesting because as you're speaking, you're also including others. It's not just your memories of home and interpretation and experience and viewing, but you're like, okay, this is something that everybody, pretty much, experiences. So you're kind of including everybody in the equation.
Absolutely. I think we think about nostalgia, and on social media you'll see posts of, like, 80s cereals, and you remember the smell of 80s Fruit Loops, for example, or something like that. And it is this very it's a personal sensation, but it's also something that anyone who grew up in the 80s is going to remember, and it's going to flip that switch for them. And that can be a really positive thing. It can be a trigger, or somewhere in the middle, because we tend to really idealize and transform these memories to be able to deal with them. So they change and they almost take on a life of their own. And I think that's what I'm really speaking to in the installation piece. Um, that is in the biennial, is all of these little memories that have transformed and kind of taken on a life of their own, and they want to go and follow people, and become a part of someone else's life in the same way.
Mhm. That is so beautiful. It's like these memories are like these living, breathing entities, and you're like bringing them to life through your execution of your artwork and through all these ideas and whatnot.
That's the hope. That's my aim. Definitely, definitely.
Let's go ahead, if you're okay with this, Samantha. Let's go ahead and look at one of the images and have you elaborate so we can get a little more visual feel of your artwork.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Give me just a second, and I'll pull
Of
up the first
course.
image. All right.
Yes. So this is a piece, or a collection of pieces, called I have a secondary piece that I'm working on in my head. This is inescapable moments. I also have inseparable moments is in there. That's in progress thing. So I keep getting them mixed up. But this is inescapable moments, and this is I think I counted, there are a total of 44 little sculptures. There's a couple that are crawling on the larger one there, and they're all um different aspects of home, different little pieces or elements of memories for me. Um, they are all made from primarily reclaimed materials, as you mentioned. So I save cardboard. I am in my studio, and behind me is relatively clean, if you can believe it. On the other side of me is my collection of materials that I'm working with. So if you can just imagine all the cardboard, it's probably close to what you're imagining. As well as things like packing paper and tissue paper. These all have wire. They are um, created in a way that is organic, and I do let the materials themselves sort of talk to me and guide me and see what they're going to do, and then I elaborate on that, so that I'm not trying to sort of force my memory into them, but usually the form and then the materials start to inform and almost make me remember these tiny little moments. For the most part, that's how the creation sort of goes. And then they're layered using a lot of acrylic mediums. Hot glue is a wonderful thing, but I always use a lot of acrylic medium so that these are pretty stable, and um, you can't necessarily recognize any one element. They do become an entity with all of the layers. Some of them have little bits of writing on them using graphite or pastel occasionally. Some of them have some mica or little metallic elements. Some use gouache or charcoal. So, I mean, they're very individual as far as how they're created. I really try and make sure that each one has its own voice and they're not just a sort of a copy of one another, because that's not the point. I mean, granted, sometimes memories do echo and mimic each other, and days blend together and all that, but these are little discrete moments. The first ones of these were actually made pre-COVID, um, and Since then, it's been a collection that I have, I think I started in 2019, and I've just continually been working on them. They've just been sort of growing and developing in that time. And I call them houselets because they are like little miniature houses. And they each, like I said, they each have their own little memory, or idea or feeling. So it's not just sort of a strict memory for me, but it's that individual sort of sensation or moment or feeling. And they're meant to be a little bit odd and maybe sweet or maybe a little melancholic. Um, and because they are, I mean, they're stable, but they appear to have this movement, like they could be walking around or wandering off somewhere. I think they really are this idea or this reflection of our relationship between safety and the home and the scarcity of homes and instability of home and, life and the future. Um, and they're sort of, some of them are kind of crumbling, they're falling apart, they're older, some of them are a little newer and fresher and lighter. But they are each individual, and I love that about them. And they each have a gesture. And I think most of them can actually be modified and moved and posed a little bit as well, one of the benefits of using things like wire.
Mhm. Wow, this is so fascinating, Samantha. So each of these pieces, as you've explained your process and some of the materials that you use, how you create them, and your relationship to the materials, which is so interesting because as you were saying, you allow them to speak to you. You don't really have such a preset, okay, this is going to be this is going to be that. You have like an idea, but you let it unfold. So all these pieces are really like different aspects of a memory or a feeling, and they all take on these different attributes as you were saying, as they relate specifically to home. And then you have the larger structure of the home, and it is, you feel like they're like walking. There's this like movement where they're going actually up to the home, kind of like bringing back, full circle, how that they all relate to home, whether it's, stability or instability, or as you said, a sweet memory, or whatever the case might be.
Absolutely, and they are arranged, and they do have sort of a meandering path
Mhm.
on the plinth as well, and some of them are kind of, huddling together. There's a couple that are curious. I do kind of think of the larger piece as as almost a mother figure. I her each piece has two names, I should say, both a more esoteric name that refers to the feeling or the memory that they have or the idea, and then they have a personal name, and I've been calling her Mama Dolores, um, the larger piece. It just seems to suit her, and there are actually a couple of the smaller pieces are crawling on her staircase on the side as well.
Mhm.
And I love that, the fact that I can get that interaction and change it, and it's going to change the entire feeling of the piece, depending on the arrangement.
Right, right, absolutely. And it looks as if you're actually there in the exhibit. You can walk all the way around it to get some different perspectives, some different views.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, there are some more curious little figures. I think Alexander is on the far side, looking up, being nosy about what's going on on the other side. Not that I personify my work at all. I think, a lot of artists will talk to their work and think of it as having a life of its own. I definitely fall into the camp,
Mhm.
at least with these pieces for sure.
That's really interesting, that you refer to this as sort of like the mama house, or, she has a specific name. Because when I was looking at it, I felt like all of these memories, all these feelings, and these different parts of memory, it's like they're all coming back home or to mom. Would it be correct, Samantha, that in your particular case, that that home, not only as a physical structure, but could also be a metaphor in your work. And let me know if this is correct, that home could be a metaphor for mother.
It certainly could be. It certainly could be. I've honestly, I haven't thought about that. I think home is whatever it needs to be for you personally. And I've always thought of the broad idea of home, as it could be, a physical place. It could be when we think about indigenous peoples, the land is home, that is such a huge consideration. It can be a space, it can be a piece of clothing that makes you feel at home and well placed in yourself, or it can be a mental space, and I think that's so individual.
Mhm.
Um, I think for me personally, I don't equate Mama Dolores with, my own mother in a way, but I think of her as more of a, um, maybe a larger, more overbearing memory that she is protective, but she's also allowing the others to kind of disperse, and some of them are being protected by her, and some are maybe escaping, because there is always that back and forth
Mhm.
with memory.
Mhm.
It's every time we remember something, we rewrite that memory in a very slightly different way. So it's very mutable. It's alterable and layered,
Mhm. Yes.
and I think it's that duality that really interests me as well, and how we can take, even the darkest memories, and then we laugh about them and we transform them and turn them into something that is nostalgic.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's beautiful, and then that's where healing can become, a very important modality, so to speak, of creating art for the artist, and then of course, for the viewer, it can have that, powerful impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've always been someone who sort of thinks through the creative process, thinks through making, and responds to the materials, and usually if something is too well planned out, then it doesn't turn out quite as expected or necessarily as well. And so I think it certainly, also allows me to be in that flow state, that meditative state as well, which is very healing and calming. And hopefully some of that sort of comes out in the fact, or in the idea, that there are so many details and places where your eye and your mind can kind of meander through these things, and see more than what a quick glance would give you. I love that idea of mystery and hidden things within each piece.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, and I love the point that you just brought up, Samantha, that there's the element of thought process, that's involved in your artwork, which plays an important role, and it kind of sets the foundation. Again, using a house, it sets the foundation, but yet you're so flexible with, just as you said, being in the flow, and just being in the moment, and being immersed in the creative process, and just, in a way, kind of stepping back and saying, okay, how is this house or art piece going to be built now that we've kind of, set a couple intentions, set a couple ideas, and you have that beautiful flexibility, and just like, okay, now time to create, and we're just be in that moment, and your beautiful word is organic, and just let that, art unfold. Very beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is why I have always loved to work with multiple mediums. I'm not someone who's like, I'm a painter, I'm a sculptor, I'm a ceramicist, I'm a printmaker. I can't choose, because it's horses for courses. If I'm in the state and something comes to mind that needs to be added, that it has to have some element to it, then I want the freedom to at least have the base level of knowledge of whatever medium needs to be used to make that function.
Mhm.
So I am a big proponent of this idea of, um, the Renaissance woman, I guess, if you would say, being able to work in nearly every medium. It's so valuable to me, and
Yes.
I do draw and I work in silver point and I'm a ceramic artist as well as, all of these other weird things.
I love how you don't label yourself, and it's like you're attracted to the cardboard box, but you don't want to be in it.
That's true. I've been in it for long enough. I think that's probably part of it. I want to dissect it. I want to make my own house out of it, which is what I'm doing,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, and here we have a close-up of the installation you were just speaking about.
Yes, absolutely. I have my favorite little moments in this piece, and this is definitely one of them. I love this idea of the worm's eye view and being able to look at these things from any angle. I think it's why I'm not strictly a painter, because I always want to see what's on the backside of the painting. I'm the person in the museum who goes and peers around the backside of these things to see what's hidden and what's happening. So I love being able to see the little legs and even the bottoms of them, and see all of those details. There are I'm trying to remember any particular moments within each of these pieces. This front white and blue piece, I think, kind of harkens back to the house I was born in. That I heard a lot of stories about when I was younger, and so it's not a direct translation, but it has sort of this flavor of a little white house in the mountains that's kind of ramshackle and falling apart a little bit, but is also strong and stable and protective. So it has slightly shorter legs and is enclosed, doesn't really have a lot of windows or doors or anything. So it's a safe and enclosed space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I think about with these is a lot of times they are enclosed. They don't have a lot of open doors and windows. A few do here and there, but not in sort of a traditional architectural sense, because they are meant to sort of hold themselves close and secret. We don't share a lot of those memories, right? We keep them safe in ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Now that's really interesting and fascinating. That's the reason why you don't have like doors or windows on them is because of what you just elaborated on. That's very interesting, Samantha. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
This.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Go
you go ahead.
No, sure. Would you like to share something else about this image?
I think that no, I think we have covered that image.
Okay. All right. Very good. Let's go to the next one, Samantha.
Okay.
All right.
All right, and you actually should be able to see her behind me as well. This is the girl in the white room, which this is actually an interpretation of a very specific childhood memory of mine. Um, I wanted something that was eerie and a little bit different. So she is made of ceramic as well as cardboard. She's actually in two pieces. So the base is a white stoneware that uses underglaze and glaze, and has also had some acrylic added to her as well, and washes and that sort of thing to kind of age her legs. And then she's she's sort of an uprooted house that is wandering around, her little girl shoes and little blue tights and whatnot. But she has this unlit light bulb that's made from cardboard, as is her body. Yep, that's the light bulb. And there is a pull chain to that light bulb.
Mhm.
And the story is I lived in this house, and I don't think I've shared this on social media or anything, so you're getting an exclusive. um, so I myself and my family lived in this beautiful house in Virginia briefly. As I said, we moved around a lot, and at one point, this particular house, it was an old Victorian, and the memory of it really sticks out very strongly in my mind. The house had a big personality. It's got split by that particular owner into three different apartments, and we lived on the second floor. Um, at some point in its life, its interior was painted in wild colors. So there was a blue room and a green room. The kitchen was orange, so it was very bright. And my room was I think it was a former servant's quarters. So it didn't have light switches. The rest of the house had the button style of light switches, if anyone remembers those or knows what those are. Quite old at this point. But my room, you had to wade into the darkness and feel for this pull cord to
Mm,
turn on the light at night. And the same room, it was the smallest of the apartments, and it was white, and it was always either the hottest in the summer or the coldest in the winter. Um, and I remember very specifically one night that I was getting ready to go to bed, and I was afraid to go into this room because you couldn't see anything. I was a kid, we have imaginations. I've always been a big reader, so I've always had a very big imagination. And I have this very distinct memory. Whether it actually happened this way or it was my imagination playing tricks on me, I am not going to, say one way or another. But I go to push my door open a little bit and I hear this growl from behind the door. And so for me, she is the embodiment of this sort of ghost story for me. This fear, this uncanniness in the darkness, trying to exist in this white room. And obviously I didn't want to sleep in my room anymore, and certainly didn't that night. Parents are like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong," and that's totally normal, but it sticks out as this very strong encapsulated moment. And so that's where she has come from. So she has cardboard wooden floors with little gold nails on the inside, and the white baseboards, and that really, really long pull cord that's never where you think it's going to be.
mhm. Wow, this is so thought provoking. And it's also, I love the progression that we're moving in, because now we have a home, this old Victorian home that you've been beautifully describing. We get a great feel for, what it looked like, and the room that you were in. And it's taking on a lot more personality. Plus, it's almost like sliced in half. So now we get this like little more inside view, and the shoes, and in your childhood, and the memory, and the sound that you heard, and the pull cord, and the light. It just speaks so much. And also how memories, and particularly in childhood, but of course in adult life, but in childhood, how these memories kind of linger. And with the shoes, like they move, the house moves, these memories move no matter where you are. That memory could be there, and you beautifully represented all of this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wanted it to be, I mean, my memory of that house is that it was older, and that it was maybe not in the best shape, and so it was a little bit aged. And so I was thinking about that in well, how am I going to finish these things? It wasn't moldy or anything, but I wanted it to have almost that feel where it is aged and maybe a little foreboding. So the colors are bright, but they're also sort of bleeding into one another, and they almost do have this moldy or mildewy sense. And then, her skirt is made up of sort of grass covered, which all of that is this combination of like paper and wire, hot glue and mediums to make roots and to make a grass covered lawn, so that she has almost uprooted herself to run away. But really, she's standing there and she's a sentinel or a reminder, sort of a welcome into the darkness
Mm.
kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you incorporate all of the senses so well, and you do get a feel of that eeriness or that darkness, but yet there's also a balance and also that element of mystery. Like you really invite the viewer to kind of like, observe and reflect, which I think is just so beautiful because then we kind of become more intimate with the piece.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That is my hope. And I mean, I think since so many of these pieces, and although this is a much larger piece, but it's still in miniature, from real life. These are not like Dohoso's, gigantic embroidered wonderful houses that are copies of his former homes. They're small, and so they in some ways mimic, I think, our fascination with doll houses.
Mm.
This idea of where we're playing life in this smaller format, and we want to open all the little drawers and the cabinets in the dollhouse and really take a look at all of the details to find all those tiny little mysteries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You really open up the doors of so much conversation, just, within your pieces. And, we've only looked at two thus far.
Thank you.
Um,
Trying.
Samantha, let's go ahead to the next one and have you share with us if you would.
Absolutely. So this is titled Help Me Search, Please. Um, this piece it's kind of a combination of things for me. Um, it is a little bit different of a format from the other pieces that I've shown, in the fact that it's not a standalone sculpture. This is actually a wall piece, and it's showing some of my painting skills. Um, But I can't get past that idea of wanting to have things that come out into the world. So I love those three-dimensional elements
Mhm.
and this idea of, when we remember something. One day I kind of sat down and was trying to imagine, well, how do we remember things? How does that happen in our mind? What does the vision of it look like? And I came down to this idea of, yes, we relive conversations and these brief moments, but they're generally really short. And sometimes they're almost like a stop action animation where they're a series of frames. So it's almost like we're seeing a series of frames or a series of actions that are happening, compressed all into one moment. And so you have these shovels that are attempting to dig, to excavate. And so I'm thinking about in this piece the excavation of memory, searching for home maybe, or searching for something lost beneath the soil. And so you do have like this layer of soil, and it becomes almost archaeological when you're delving back into your mind like that.
Mhm.
And this particular piece, it's at least in part inspired by my father. He had this great love of tobacco barns. I grew up in primarily North Carolina and Virginia, and particularly in North Carolina, you have tobacco fields and they smell wonderful and sweet. And, say what you will about smoking, but the tobacco itself smells lovely. And there would be all of these really ramshackle tobacco barns where, the leaves would be cut and they would hang in there to dry. And he is an artist, so grew up with him painting these tobacco barns. And so thinking back to that time, and kind of unconsciously at the time that I made this, it took me going back and looking at it and going, oh, that's what I was doing. That happens sometimes in artwork, right? We don't often, sometimes we don't know what we're doing until after the fact. Um, but it is this sort of my version of one of these tobacco barns, one of these fond memories. And, in the midst of a storm where there's maybe lightning and it's lighting up the grass and creating those strange colors. And all the while there's this rush to find something that's lost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Samantha, I'm going to stop the screen share. I have a couple of questions to ask you.
Sure.
Okay, so we've looked at three of your art pieces that cover the kind of like the whole concept of home and exploring it from different angles and the memories that are contained in home. And a lot of it sounds like it was inspired by childhood, and you were moving around a bit and looking at boxes. When you move, you put things in boxes, memories are in boxes, and you're so observant into the like I was saying, like the environment and the smells and how things look and how they feel when you touch them, and the whole the different bodily sensory experiences that you're having. So as you're exploring all these areas, Samantha, and I imagine you've explored these in many other pieces as well. So we touched upon it. It can be very healing, and whatnot. And it feels like there's also maybe a quest for something that, as you were saying in the prior piece, and perhaps before that, something is missing. When you are out of your studio, or you could be in your studio, but you've created several of these pieces. What do you take with you? What are your like, intellectual and also like, feeling level conclusions of what you're creating, and why? Um, like I'm just trying to go in that area of like your art is serving you, and I'm trying to get at what it is serving you at like a deep level, because we have a great overview of everything that's going on with your work. You so beautifully illustrate that. But now that you've explored this, and then you perhaps you will continue, what are you searching for, and what is this bringing to you, as a full, person, as the fullness of Samantha Jones? What is she getting at this at a deep level?
I think, the problem is much like I can't choose a particular medium to work with. I think I have just a lot of ideas and thoughts and ways in which this work does sort of heal and make me feel safe and at home. On a personal level, I believe it is this idea of making use of these materials that I've lived out of and have collected, and I've always been a collector, and finally being able to say, yes, I can use these things in this way and make objects that mean more than just this container. Even though they're still containers, they hold things that are important. And I think it is about that transformation. And so it's a transformation of materials for me. It's a transformation of that habit of collecting. And it's a transformation of memories in trying to turn them into something that's sweet and fascinating, is as opposed to, maybe some slightly less pleasant moments here and there, or fearful moments like the girl in the white room. It's that changing into something that she's a sentinel, she's a guardian now, and not just this person who was so scared
Mhm.
as a child. And so I think transformation is a big part of it for me. um and the joy of sort of being able to fully relive and imagine those moments in a deep sensory way. in a bodily way for me is really, really important, but also hopefully sharing that with others. But in a broader sense, I'm always at the top of my mind thinking about these more practical elements of how we're stuck at home. And, my personal experience as an immigrant in the UK and coming back here and thinking about the immigration, issues that we have that are really terrible, how people are treated, how, affordable housing is not something that is readily available, how being in a safe home is very privileged, and so I am thinking about those things, those broader issues as well. I can't help but do that. Home is such a huge issue. And so it is sort of my way of starting to point the finger and say, something has got to give, as well as trying to transform those more personal and universal moments for people.
Right, that was so beautifully expressed. So it's transforming for you, and also at the societal level, looking at the home and the immigration issue and all the things that you just elaborated on, and the safety and stability aspects. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah. We have one more image, so let's go ahead and check that one out. Give me just a moment, and I'll pull that up. Okay.
Do we?
Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull up your Instagram account if you don't mind. And
Of course.
why don't you have some beautiful stuff here. There is what we have been looking at. Stop me when there's something that you'd like to speak about. We still have a few moments, Samantha, before we wrap up the show. Oh, I see some of your
Absolutely.
drawings there.
Yes, that's actually one of my it's kind of a frozen moment. The drawing of the lamp, the close up there, that is a Silver Point piece. It's one of a series that I've been working on off and on for a while now. Silver Point is it's such a wonderful material. I love this idea of actually being able to draw with metal and how stable that is. But then at the same time, silver over time it tarnishes and it turns this beautiful warm color. So the drawing itself transforms itself over time. But each of the drawings in this series are these really cropped in close moments where we're not really we're kind of gazing off into the distance and we're not paying attention, we're not in the present moment. So the idea of studying this tiny little square, and this is only 6 by 6, and then a border, so they're pretty small, and all of them in that series are that same size, but it's like a study or a meditation in being present in that space, and being able to study and think about what has happened in this moment, what has happened right here, what about the dust that is gathered, or not that I'm shouldn't be too dusty, but who dusts, right? um and what can I see beyond, past the curtains, and what does the light do, and how does the light change from day to day as I'm working on it. And so it's this succession of moments that are captured, and
Mhm.
I just love that, and the meticulous nature of working in Silver Point. It's all these very, very fine little cross hatch marks to get the layers of value. So it is very meditative.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share.
Sure.
I'm glad that you shared that with us. So now we could get, some of your Silver Point drawing, now that we've, looked at some of your other artworks, and we get a little bit more variety of the Samantha Johns experience. We
Thank you.
have a few more minutes, Samantha. Share with us something that we haven't touched upon in your art.
That is tricky. We've gone a lot of places here. Um,
I have a question for you.
okay.
I mean, I'm wondering, in your perspective, and this is obviously, kind of general, but I'm just so, interested in your work and the way that you view things and the openness and yet the meticulousness and it's just a whole like, thought process and exploring all these things. Okay, so my question is, what do you feel is the role of the artist?
In society, you mean? Well, I don't think that society can exist without artists and artisans. It's in, everything that we do. But more specifically, and this is something that I'm still, struggling with personally and trying to figure out how to do this. But the artist, is an illuminator. They're a translator of image and experience. And a translator of information. In not even in recent times, there's a long history of artists working with scientists and scientists also being artists. We look at, Da Vinci, and so many other artists who are also inventors. And certainly in more recent times, artists are working in the sciences to help translate these very abstract ideas into something that can be understood more easily, that can be understood visually or sensorily. And, scientists concentrate a lot of times on the data, but then making that into something that they can then extrapolate or understand better or make others understand to continue their research and their theories. It is so vitally important. We understand anatomy because of drawings. We understand um, things like quarks and um, astrophysical anomalies because of artists translating them and painting or drawing or digitally rendering these things. I think artists are the great translators, and be that social messages, or be that something more ethereal or more tangible. I think it's absolutely essential. Aside from the fact that, otherwise we would all probably be living in cubes with gray clothing. The fact that artists do influence every aspect of our lives, and I think we kind of take that for granted. Actually, no kind of about it, but and as I also am an instructor, I love inspiring others and helping them to translate their ideas, so hopefully they can learn how to translate others' ideas as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Translator, illuminator, and the merge of art and science, and also the inspirer. Wow. Wow. Samantha, this has been such an amazing interview, and I'm so grateful for you sharing about your art and your process and what it's all about. We do need to wrap up the show now. We'd like to offer you the closing comments and then let us know how we can stay connected with you.
Absolutely. And thank you so very much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. Um, I think my closing comments, honestly, I didn't prepare anything for this in particular, but I would like to invite your audience to take a moment and sit in their home and experience their home and the memories that have accumulated there. And pay attention and have some joy in that, if you can. I know we're all stuck inside, and so home is something we're all trying to escape, I think, at this point. But it is it's worth living in the moment and being present in your home space, and understanding the memories that you've created there. You can find me on Instagram. I am on Twitter as well, and you will find me under Symmetry with all Y's, Symmytry. I also have a website, which we did not look at today, but it is just Samantha with a Y, Jones.com. So you can find my work there as well. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would happily respond. And please go see the Biennial at the Cultural Council. It is a wonderful exhibition. There's such a great variety, and I love all of the work that I have seen in it, and I plan to go back and visit again just to experience it all again. It's really phenomenal. So if you're local, please go. Also, there is a public award, People's Choice Award, that voting for that is on through the end of the exhibition, which I believe the end is May 28th. So you have plenty of time to go and visit and vote.
Yes, okay, so we can go and vote. All right, and at the end of May, we find out the results of that. Very good. Samantha, thank you so much for your magical art and your magical presence and your closing comments. So beautiful, and bringing us back home to your whole theme and your whole concept, and beautiful advice on the home, and how apropos, given current situations and whatnot. Wow. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Samantha, thank you so much for being our guest artist today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you, everybody, for watching Art and Talk today. And again, remember, if you're here locally, to please go check out the Biennial exhibit at the Cultural Council in Lake Worth. And again, we'll be providing a link, if you're not local, to the Cultural Council website, so you can check out a little bit more and read a little bit more information about what this exhibit is about and the amazing artists that are in it as well. So continue to stay connected with us for the next week or so as we bring you some more artists from the Biennial exhibit. Thank you again for taking the time to watch Art and Talk. We appreciate it. Thank you again, Samantha, for your time and sharing your art with us. Thank you. And we'll talk soon on the next Art and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.